I'm Andrea from Unearthing Shadows Paranormal, and I have brought a dear friend of mine to have a really in-depth conversation. So I'd like to introduce you to.
I am David, and as you can no doubt tell, I am in the UK, and I'm staying up very late this conversation with Andrea, but it's an absolute pleasure, and we've been looking forward to doing this for some time. So, hello everyone.
Thank you so much for staying up late and having this chat with me.
Thank
So I'm going to pass the conversation kind of over you to lead, just because I'd like to ask kind of what your opinion and stance is on the paranormal. You obviously know what mine is, and and you're welcome to ask whatever questions you have for me.
Excuse me, sorry, nicotine required. My opinions on the paranormal have altered considerably over the last sort of 30, 35 years of my life. When I was a child, I was obsessed with ghosts, obsessed with the paranormal, obsessed with local legend and lore and all that kind of stuff. And as I grew older and my sort of beliefs differed, I didn't purposely go out with the intention of saying I don't buy into all this stuff anymore and I'm going to debunk. But that being said, I wanted more conclusive proof than what I was being shown and what I was being fed and what have you. And it became a thing where about 15 years ago I started doing magic. Not particularly good magic, but it was more mentalism, and it made me realize the power of suggestion and susceptibility and that kind of thing. And with that in mind, when you realize that effectively a magic trick is just like a ruse, it's a mental con, it's fake, but what you're doing is essentially manipulating whatever it is you're doing, whether it's your wording, whether your presentation, or whatever it is you're holding. You're manipulating that to create an illusion of a miracle. Well, for all intents and purposes, to me, the supernatural was a miraculous thing, or, the way we view it is of a miraculous persuasion. And I realized, well, if it's easy enough to make this disappear there and make someone think of that there, and, I just became very skeptical. With regards to, my own spiritual beliefs were quite jaded by this point. Life kicks us all in the backside, and you tend to go one way or another. And I went very, very cynical. And on top of what I could see was easily manipulatable, on top of my cynicism, I was just like, I can't buy into this anymore. I can't buy into it. I can still be intrigued by the legend, the lore, the whole background that sort of surrounds it, but I can't necessarily buy into, the story's interesting to me, but I wouldn't necessarily put it down as being gospel or truth until someone could prove me otherwise. And so far, no one has proven me otherwise. And I guess in a lot of respects, people like me are there not to be, I'll choose my words carefully, a-holes to the paranormal community. There are those people who do that, but I think ultimately anyone who negates it is doing it as a cattle prod to someone to say, prove me wrong, because we want to be proven wrong. We all want that reassurance that maybe there is something else. It may not be God. I'm sorry, I am an atheist, but it may not be God. It may not be spirits. It may not be, but I think there's a secret little bit of agnosticism in a lot of us that thinks we don't necessarily know what we believe, but we'd like to be proven that there is something as an afterlife. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's been my philosophy for a long time. So yes, I'm still intrigued and sort of interested in the whole mythology and the lore of it all, but do I buy into it? Not until someone can prove to me otherwise. And I know that makes me sound a little bit overly jaded, but Nearly 50, I'm allowed to. But I'd love to be proven wrong, seriously. I would love to be proven wrong. You know, if I hear about local, I mean, I know a lot of the local legends from around here, and there are quite a few. I mean, England's an old country. We've got, you know, we're steeped in history. Even in our cities, it's steeped in history because it's built on older ruins of whatever. London, Birmingham, whatever. They've all got stories to tell. So I'm still interested in all of that. But I've yet to have anything proven to me otherwise, though I'm hoping someone will be able to.
I think with what we do, it's actually very healthy to have a bit of skepticism, right? Because what it does, and to be challenged, because it forces us to not just take the surface level of what we think is going on and say that's fact. It really makes us, as paranormal investigators, be like, we have to bring tangible proof. We have to rule out every possibility. And then with what's left, we still have to be able to explain it with some sort of certainty. So I don't think it's a bad thing when us, you know, who do what we do are challenged, and when there are skeptical questions. Even I would say, even myself and some of the girls on the team, I feel we have some healthy skepticism, and it helps propel us. And there's nothing wrong with dispelling things or debunking things we believe, because it really, what we're doing is we're truth seekers, right? And whatever the truth is, you know, it's the truth. And rather than telling lies, like we do, I personally do believe that there is more than what we understand, and that there is something within the paranormal that does exist. But what that is, I mean, like, you know, it is what it is. Like at the end of the day, no matter what anybody believes, and that's all we're trying to do. And if we are proven wrong, you know, or even if elements are proven wrong, it's still important data, because then when we go into a situation, we can pick things out quicker. And then when we get to a point where we can say, well, we've ruled out all these things and it's still unexplainable, it just helps build the foundation a little bit more about our pursuits.
Well, it refines, I think, you know, I mean, I know I'm not trying to put myself above other skeptics or whatever, but I think that what it should be realized is that asking these questions gives more refined answers. Like you say, it narrows down possibilities, it cuts off avenues that might be complete and utter hogwash. It narrows those avenues down so that essentially you can have a more focused perspective on what the hell it actually could be. Do you know what I mean? Okay, it's not that. It's definitely not that. That's definitely not. Whoa, hang on, it could be that. You know, so it narrows it down. And I think that anyone with a healthy use of, anyone with a healthy skeptical mind can utilize that, not just for the sake of being a hole, to be dismissive. And I used to be like that. I'll be honest with you, I was at a point in my life where I'm like, nah. And I realized that I was not coming across as being an authoritarian. I was coming across as being just a glib, smug, you know, insert word here. And I realized that it was my own sort of jaded opinions about other things that had made me feel like that. And I had reason for that to happen, but I was projecting, and that's not a good thing to do. Whereas now I have gone more back into the, well, I still don't believe it, but I would, like I say, like to. And I think that with skepticism, like I say, you can chip away the bits that are clearly irrelevant, but then you can get a more refined perspective on what reality really is, or what possibilities really are.
I agree with that. I think, yeah, I think it's healthy overall in this field on any side, just to, you know, be open to new possibilities. And, you know, even with my opinions and thoughts, I try to be very open and fluid, because I know some things that I first thought when I first started investigating are not the same opinion I have now. And I think that's healthy to be open to that. But then when you get to that point where you're like, I know this for sure at this point, this is to me fact, you know, then that's a good thing, because done your due diligence trying to prove both sides of it, and you've been able to come to this conclusion. So,
well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I watched some of your videos, I immediately docked into it because this wasn't some. Let's put it. Let me put it politely. It wasn't one of these big budget. The way they get views is to have something happen every single week. So there is a certain amount of rigging done on these big shows. Not all of them, but some of them. One that's British that I won't elaborate on.
I know.
When you were doing it, it was from a place of complete honesty and integrity. And I docked into that straight away. So even the skeptical part of me was like, well, what have they got to gain? It's not like they're doing a magic trick and da-da, where's the rabbit gone? Or da-da, where's the card gone? Which card did you pick? It was none of that stuff. You had nothing to gain but to, establish the truth. And there were little elements that I watched. I watched all of them, but there were little elements that I was like, that can't be rigged. There was something that you got on the mic, and it didn't sound like flight of fancy or wish fulfillment of, was that a noise? Was that a dog barking? Was it sound of something falling over? It was a genuine voice, and I actually went. I did a little double take, and for things to hit me at that kind of root core level of, oh, it's like my skeptical guard was down, and it hadn't been down for a long time, and I was like, that's interesting. And you were halfway to getting to the point where I was like, they are proving something here, and this intrigues me even more so. So what I was saying before about wanting to be proven to, with genuine honesty and sincerity, there were things that made me sit up and go, oh, this wasn't something that was being done for the sake of getting an audience so they get lots of big paychecks. This is people who are doing it with genuine, interest, genuine, with genuine relevance to the what it is they're trying to achieve. It didn't feel rigged. It didn't feel staged or set up. And I was just like, that really intrigued me, and still does.
Well, I appreciate you saying that a lot, because that is something, not just me, but for me, telling the truth and just being honest is most important. Everybody, like on the team and the crew, feel the same way. Like, it's just about integrity. And the thing is, like, you're right, we're not getting big paychecks. Like, the majority of this is coming out of my and everybody else's pockets. Like, we pay for everything we do. We pay for the equipment. A lot of the times we pay huge amounts of money to be able to investigate a place. So, that's a major piece. It's not about fame or huge paychecks. And the other part is that, we're all professionals, established people, and we have reputations to uphold. So for us coming forward, and like others do, you really have to be careful of that. So we knew that we're being really honest and have sincere interest in what we do. And that's all we want to do, is just like, these are our experiences. This is what we've uncovered, this is the research we've done. Here's the picture we can pull together for you as factually as we can, and for us as well. And also too, the amount of hours we put in, going over evidence, talking to specialists and experts, learning our crafts, trying to become better investigators, so constantly learning about science and technology. Like, it takes so much of your time. It's not something somebody would typically do if you're just trying to fake something. Yes, there are people out there that do that, but they definitely don't put in those hours and money that we do. So, we're really wanting that to come through. Like, we really want anybody who watches our videos and what we do to see that we are genuine, because we are. Like, as best as my word as I can give everybody, like, everything we do is honest. And I've always been really firm on that, where there's no elements that we do that are faked or falsified, or with the content we put out, at least.
The thing is, it's like you just said, it's not like you've got a big production team and you've got to do your research. It's not like you've got someone with an auto cue saying da 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 this, that, and the other, like on QVC or whatever, where you're getting scripts recanted to you and you just regurgitate them in your own way. You've got to do all your background. You've got to do all your due diligence. You've got to do all your checks, your research. You're the one paying out it's not like it's not like it's something that's been pre-set up. The studio put all the money into it, and if it goes wrong, well, so what? We write it off, and on to the next thing. This is something that you're doing out your own pocket. You're not gaining from this any more than what you do and what you want your end results to be. But also, it's about establishing your integrity. You're the one paying fiscally and otherwise, and potentially putting a reputation on the line.
Yeah.
So you're the ones with all the risks. So why would you BS your way through it or create something that's otherwise, rooted in some kind of, nonsense or what have you, because it's not like someone's backing you up and saying, well, if it goes wrong, nah, we'll move on. You are literally putting everything on the line.
Exactly. And tying into that point, like, I don't know if everybody realizes, like, we've been doing this like a long time before we've even put any of this on social media or on our websites or any video type media content. Like, we've been, I've been somewhat interested or involved in the paranormal since I was a kid, and like this all stemmed from things that had personally happened to me or things that I had seen other people go through. And it wasn't really until recently, and that is one positive thing about the TV shows, is that people are now talking about it and it's more an accepted thing. But like, some of the things I had been through, everybody knew what was going on, and it was like, Andrea, you cannot talk about it, like, don't, just keep quiet. And I'm thinking like, well, how is this helping me? And then you hear other people kind of quietly telling you, being like, hey, this happened to me too, but I can't really tell anybody about it. So then at least, you naturally would then want to help them, and because you now have a connection that you both been through something similar. So for me, I was like, that's not good enough. Like, like we should be able to use our voices. We should be able to ask for help and not be embarrassed or ashamed by it, even if other people don't believe us. Right? We know what happened. You as an individual are not going to lie to yourself. You know what you've been through, and sometimes you just want to be heard and not judged, and hopefully have somebody that can either relate or help you. So that progressed, and everybody on the team as well, whether it's like, like our camera crew or our audio crew, the cast, the girls on the team, like, we're all doing this because we have sincere interests, and we each have little elements that have happened to us in our life that has brought us into this curiosity, around the paranormal. So it's not just like, hey girls, let's get together and this might be something fun to do. It's all come from a place of, personal curiosities and intrigue. And like you say, like, our team is really small, and like, yeah, we absolutely are hoping to get our show a little bit bigger on the big screen. But for us, it's not about money or the fame or anything. It's because it gives us opportunity to, to assist with our field work. It is really, really expensive, and I don't think people understand that. It gives us better travel opportunities to attend locations that wouldn't be open to us otherwise. And all that was actually like an accident. Like, it wasn't like we sat together and like we're like, let's try to develop a TV show or get our stuff on YouTube. It came from accidentally selling something online, talking to a film and TV professional who was really intrigued with what I do. I got involved in consulting with the paranormal on different film and TV projects, and people were just really interested in our stories. So then that's where it came from, being like, I think we could probably do some good with this and maybe help people feel they can talk about it, because we're all just real people who've experienced such things, and we saw some value in that. So that's where we come from, at least. I know everybody has different reasons, but that's ultimately where we are right now and why we've released stuff publicly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, like I say, this is the thing. I think there are three types of people who do this kind of thing. The ones who are after the glory and the whatever, and they'll get it however which way. I think there are the ones who don't necessarily do it for any particular reason, but like I say, they almost do it like a bit of a magic trick. And I'm not negating anyone specific. I'm just saying what I've experienced and seen with regards to people's attempts at things doing this kind of thing. And then all of a sudden you get this, and I mean this really sincerely, not just because you're my friend, but you get people who are doing it, and it's completely sincere. It's completely without any pretense or any BS or any kind of facade. It just comes across as being, what have they got to gain from this apart from proving that with their general interests and their general sort of consensus of opinion and their general sort of intrigue about this kind of thing, we just want to put it out there. You know what I mean? And that comes across as being very, very true with you guys. There's no whitewashing. There's no kind of pretending something it's not. Whether I believe that it is or it isn't, I'm docked in more so than I ordinarily would be, because you're giving back something to me that's making me think, rather than me thinking, well, I think I know that was done, or that seemed like a pantomime, or that seemed like whatever. I find it genuinely compelling.
Thank you. And that right there, thank you. That is so important to me, because for me personally, that's my goal. I just want people to think and ask questions. Like, we constantly live in these boxes, and that's apparent in the world we live in today. And there's so much more out there. Like, even for example, like only now we've got proof of black holes, and you even think of being able to talk to you, like you're 8 hours away from me and thousands and thousands of miles away from me, and we're able to talk almost in the sense of a different realm. So, I mean, it's just so intriguing of what's possible, and we know maybe that much. So for me, I love seeing people debate, being open to these types of conversations, to challenge these types of conversations, because it's becoming more of an intrigue. And I think that's great, because can you imagine all the things, the more people that get involved in this and throw in their theories and, field research and what they do, like, who knows what could come out of this, right? But for me, I can see helping, understanding, just it's incredible, right? And we're just kind of touching the surface here.
I think the thing is as well, you find that it's the same with anything of a particular ilk or genre, whether it be a particular type of music or a particular type of clothing or a particular type of film or whatever. Things go through cycles. Mm-hmm. And I think with the paranormal, it's pretty much ever present, but every time it comes back, it seems to be gaining a little bit more momentum and root. Obviously, like I say, my opinions differ, but let's just say that the things I've seen that are being presented, and it isn't with advances in technology or anything like that particularly. It's not like, oh, they've got a more intriguing way of making something seem real when it isn't, but just the general delivery and display and presentation of certain things seems to have be rooted in something I could get my teeth into more so than years ago, where I'd have gone, no. Do you know what I mean? And people might argue that years and years and years ago, there were, hundreds of years ago, spirit photography and making ectoplasm seemingly manifest and, all that stuff. That was all a big trick, whatever. Maybe so. But then, and these are the things I'd have hung my hat on at one point to say, well, that that's exactly why I don't believe in it. But I've noticed, like I say, things have become more inherently plausible, I guess is the word. It doesn't mean to say that my opinions have changed completely. But let's just say it's given a little bit more validity to thinking, to the contrary.
One thing I love doing is, like, I've gotten a lot of old vintage, like, paranormal books, like quite old ones, even from like the early 1900s. And I've kind of gone through and been like, okay, well, where are we today with our thinking on this particular topic or story? So for me, it was always interesting to see, okay, like, these things were debunked and we now know that science says it was this, but then there's still some things that have actually even become more a mystery over time. And both of those aspects are quite compelling to me, because it's just helps, like, it helps in what we do. But for me, it's neat to see what we've learned over time. And like I said, it's fine whatever direction it goes. I think it's all important, right? But yeah, that's it's neat to see how things develop. And I was going to say that's one of my absolute favorite things, just touching base on part of the earlier conversation, is I absolutely love it when people come up to me and say, when they learn what I do, and they're like, I really don't believe in the paranormal, but I have this story that I can't explain. So they still have that connection to the possibility that there's more going on, and I love it. I love hearing those stories. I'm like, tell me.
I think, yeah, I think it's one of those things that there are a lot of people with my mindset, some more radical than others. Mine has slipped away from the more aggressive anti-belief. And yeah, there are things that have happened to me. Nothing really, nothing really vivid, but things that at one time I'd have explained away, whether I had an explanation or not, just because I wanted to play devil's advocate. Whereas now it's like you just said, this thing happened, whatever it is. It might have been a feeling, it might have been a response by someone else to something that, it's not like something flew through the air or there was a noise or whatever, but it was someone's response to something they felt. And though I didn't feel it myself, I saw something, and I saw the response instantaneously on this person's face, and that wouldn't say scared me, but it felt a little bit uncanny and weird. Do you know what I mean? It was like it was a normal response to something, if something had jumped in front of them or something had tapped them, whatever. But I saw that response with nothing intrinsically linked to it.
Yeah.
I'll explain about that another time, but that's happened a few times where it hasn't been me that suddenly necessarily felt something, seen something, heard something, whatever. But I've seen someone's response to something that neither of us could see, and I could see their response, and that felt strange to me, because there was no necessary reason for it, and it came out of the blue.
I think that's a really important piece to watch for. And I watch that in two aspects. I pay very, very close attention to when people are telling me a story about their experience, because that will tell you a lot. You can start noticing when somebody's fabricating a story, and maybe truths of it or parts of it are truthful, but that's key. Or like you say, you can really pick up when somebody's just giving you an honest, this is just what happened, and they're not thinking about polishing what they're saying. They're just being honest, telling you. And I pay attention to that on any type of investigations, or when we're like doing a pre-investigation, or we're just being walked through a location, and the client is telling us what's going on. Pay really, really close attention to theirs and anybody associated with the property's response. Like you say, if they're noticing something, just their general reactions. And I'm like that too on an investigation. Like all of us girls are as well. Like you can really tell, like you just genuinely tune everything out, because then you're hyper focused on something that's going on. And like, you're not trying to be rude or anything, but you just instantly, and it's just a natural thing because you're noticing something that is caught your attention.
I think the thing is as well, there's that old, I mean, we've all experienced it and seen it, but it's like when you watch, ordinarily it's kids and animals, a dog looking, seemingly staring into space, or a cat seemingly staring into space, or a baby going, or whatever. We've all experienced that.
Yeah.
And it's like, we just say out loud, I wonder what they can see, you know, and we almost do it as like a little joke to ourselves, I wonder what they can see that we can't, blah, 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 blah. And we kind of, not really laugh it away, but just whittle it away as being, well, it's nothing. You get an adult person do exactly the same thing, and it feels very disarming, because obviously, as we see an animal do it, we can't see through an animal's eyes. We know that kids just become hyper, you know, focused on whatever, you know, because it's a whole new world. When you see an adult do it, they've already been through all the experiences and whatever within the world that can be thrown at them at that particular age. So for them to suddenly, you know, have a reaction that seems hugely magnified and amplified, it catches you off guard, because it seems more drastic a response than would be expected from seemingly nothing. Do you know what I mean? And it makes you go, oh, what was that? You know, it feels, like I say, it feels amplified.
Definitely. And I think that's the best way to explain this. Okay, so when something like that happens to me, it's almost like you're pulled into three realities, right? Where you're in the present dealing with the investigation, talking to, just having a regular conversation, whatever it may be. But then something like that catches your focus, and then you're kind of now pulled out into a different reality because you're trying to pay attention to whatever's going on. Then you're trying to make sense of you know, what you just saw and focus on that, and it just becomes these three parallels of like the present, paying attention to what's going on and trying to rationalize what's going on and pulling it all together. So it definitely can become amplified because you're also dealing with like natural responses, whether, you know, like we're human, right? Like you're going to get jumpy or you're going to get excitable or, you know, whatever it may be. So yeah, it's hard. And then that does kind of create a false perception of what's going on at times because people think, oh, you're just acting, but not really realizing like there's all these elements going on in a very short period, and we're trying to deal with like our physical responses and our mental responses, and you know, it's not always a polished result.
But I think when it's not a polished result, it makes it more authentic, doesn't it? It gives more gravitas to what's happening because it doesn't feel staged. It feels, it might feel hyper, you know, it might be a raised state of hyper awareness or whatever. So that might seem in some ways put on, but also in the context of, in different context, if you look at it in another way, it makes it hyper real. So as opposed to just being, well, it's like, well, for example, you know, you see someone who's acting and they overact, and there's the argument of, are they a really good actor or are they just really laying it on thick? Do you know what I mean? And there's kind of a split line between, well, is that just really, you know, and over the top, or is it just really powerful acting? And I think in situations like that, it's not that the person's acting, but the response might seem heightened. And is it a case that you know, what are they responding to that would make them go to that level, you know, and be that much more, you know? And like you say, if you're in three different sort of mindsets and focuses, everything's already disoriented anyway, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's very, it becomes kind of that blurry, surreal, distorted, you know, where you're just trying to like it can become a bit overwhelming. But then it also brings you a point of like finally focusing what you're trying to pay attention to, and then you can separate it and then bring it all together and be, you know, that's usually at the point where you're just like, hey, I need to stop this conversation, or, you know, I really need to focus on this right now. Like, I know for me, like, when I'm investigating, like one and two things will happen. Like most of the time I'm pretty serious and calm, and the goal is always keeping everybody safe. And so the other side to me is I can be that very hyper over animated person if it's something like, oh my gosh, we can hear the piano playing upstairs, let's go, and I all of a sudden become this kid at Disneyland, right? Because I'm super excited, right? But that also is dependent on the energies that I'm feeling around me, right? Like if it's a very heavy, oppressive, cautious energy around me, I'm the more serious and less reactive. But if it's like you know, if we're just going into a location, like there's one place here in Victoria where there's like a couple known to be dancing and playing the piano all the time, and we always feel that's a very good energy to be around. So then that would bring out the excitement, being like, yes, they're here, like we're so excited. And you know, because everybody thinks too, like, you know, you could go to a location like 30 times and you might get responses like 2 or 3 of the times. It's not like every time you go to a location, you're gonna get activity, you know, you're gonna see something. Like it's really the holy grail if you catch something on, you know, film, video, photography, even just like personal interaction or physical interactions. So that's the thing. That's a lot of the reasons why people get really over animated, because you're like, you've been waiting so long for this to happen, and it does. And you know, usually it creates that perception of being overly animated and maybe not always believable.
It's the same as anything, isn't it? It's a tension and release thing. It's that build up of expectation, and you know, in some cases, you know something's going to happen. Like in a horror film, you're 90% sure there's going to be a jump. You build up, and boom, it's tension and release. You listen to a certain piece of music, you know it might swell. You might have never heard the piece of music before, but you know it's going to swell and do something, and then suddenly drop. It's what happens with dance music and certain things like that. Or it might be, you know, silly analogy, but it might be when you go fishing. You know, you're pretty sure you're going to catch a fish. You hope you will, and at that point, it's like, duh, and everything. You know what I mean? That moment is very heightened because it's an expectation that's been met, and it's like a sudden yay moment. So everything becomes super amplified.
Absolutely. And sorry, I think that's such a great point, because that's exactly it. Because a lot of these locations we go into, like you say, you try not to, but you have an expectation because you're told of the stories, you're told, oh, this particular phenomenon happens all the time. So you go in there expecting that to happen. And you know, one thing that's not really considered or talked about a lot is like, I say this all the time, it's like, you know, it's no different than you walking into I won't say any specific coffee houses, but like your favorite coffee house, right? And you just walk in and you stand in the middle of that coffee shop saying, okay, all of you people start talking to me or just start dancing or interacting with me. Everybody's going to look at you and be like, are you nuts? I'm not communicating with you, and probably chuck a coffee at you or just ignore you, right? So, you know, it takes when we're dealing with like intelligent or active entities, right? Like sometimes it takes a few times of going back until they understand your energy, and then you get a sense of their energy, because in turn you may not always be picking up how they're trying to communicate, because you know there's no manual on the right way a ghost has to communicate with you, right? So that's yeah, I think it's just a really good piece to consider that I think gets overlooked.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate to my own lack of beliefs now.
Do it.
If there is theory in the belief that there are ghosts, and ghosts are based on manifestations of or spirits of people who pre-existed, those pre-existing people would have had their own personalities. So by and large, you're not going to have cookie cutter ghosts, because if they carry any of that personality, once again, playing devil's advocate, but if they carry any of that into the afterlife, or limbo, or whatever you want to call it. Sorry, I'm not technically astute with the dialogue, but the point is, you don't communicate with all people the same. So by and large, if you're communicating with ghosts at whatever level, like you say, they've got to get used to you, haven't they? You know, once again, devil's advocate, do I believe it? And then But I'm just trying to philosophize that in the same way that, you know, not all dogs want to be stroked the same, not all cats want to be picked up the same, not all kids want to be spoken to the same, not all, like I say, ghosts might want to be communicated in the same way, and then you might have to keep travelling back for that to, you know, for them to gain a metaphysical rapport with you, I guess.
100%. And we find that quite often when we're investigating. Like sometimes we'll be lucky and the spirit or spirits that are there will communicate with all of us in different ways. And sometimes, like, for example, like when we're doing like the spirit box session with just the little radio, the white noise, so we can hopefully have direct communications with them. Sometimes I'll try to communicate and I will get nothing, but then perhaps maybe like Jen or Ange or Lorianne might ask some questions and all of a sudden they're getting responses. So that's a good rule of thumb, is like, you know, whoever seems to be getting the communication, all right, you got the floor, take it over. But you're right, like it's just finding the energies that they want to associate with and vice versa. Sometimes I wonder, and I think there's reason to believe that we're probably scaring them sometimes. They're just existing in their realm, not realizing they've passed on, and or, you know, there's these noises talking to them and they're probably thinking they're being haunted as well. So they may just not respond at all, you know, or you just might see movement. Or I guess another good example is like we have this amazing building. It was the old courthouse, and you know, I've investigated there over, well, we've probably been there well over 30 times, and we know the energies there really well. And there's a woman in the courthouse, and she is just angry, always angry, angry or just watching very sternly and while communicating in that sense. And that's the energy you get from her. It very clearly comes through. Everybody else that works or used to work in the building would report the same. And then that got me thinking too, being like, you know, you're right. Like I do believe that their personalities here are going to be the same on the other side. So she's obviously holding on to that energy and projecting it. You know, the energy it takes to be that angry and upset and negative all the time is intense. So she's pulling this negative energy all the time and then pushing it out, where that would be very draining, right? So it just made me curious to think.
Yeah, I think, I mean, once again, it's not a physical thing, but you can walk into a room and even if it's not a case that everyone's being quiet and you immediately pick up on the lack of communication or whatever, you can walk into a room where there's still the same level of conversation, just like a standard level of conversation. But there might be a real you might not hear any people, you know, you might not hear any aggressive conversation or dialogue, nothing to indicate that would say something bad's happened here or someone's annoyed or what have you. But you can walk in sometimes, I think, into places and you can just pick up on the general atmosphere, and you know that something ain't quite right, and then it might come out in a while. It's like when you walk into a room with someone who you know really, really well,
Yeah.
and you might have gone out for 5 minutes to just make a cup of tea or get a glass of water, go to the toilet, whatever, and come back and something has inherently changed, and you know you've done nothing, and you know there was nothing wrong before, but all of a sudden you can feel it, and it's almost palpable. You know what I mean? It's almost a tangible feeling. And I think with that in mind, the same way that's not physical, you know, that's not a physical thing that you can feel, but you almost can.
That's just energy.
And I think if that's the case, why? Once again, I'm convincing myself here. You know, why wouldn't that exist in a past tense as well, as negative energy that just doesn't just sort of appear and then, oh yeah, something's happened, blah blah blah, and then gone again. If it was really, 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 you know, cloying within the atmosphere, it could last for years, couldn't it?
I definitely agree with that. I think there's a few elements that can hold on to energy, but I think for the most part, especially with residual hauntings, as we call it, you know, there's just an intense energy, whether it's positive, negative, it just has to be intense. That's somehow inscripted in time, and it just plays over and over like a record. And really, that's what we're dealing with. It's energy, you know, energy.
You see, this is where I can sort of clarify my own beliefs. I believe that there are certain, I believe things can hang in the air in a sort of scientific context, as to whether they're attached to a spirit or a past, past life, whatever. Once again, can't be proven, but not to, or nothing's been proven to me thus far. But saying that, from perspective of atoms and particles and whatever, from a scientific perspective, maybe does energy get held in the air?
I certainly.
I believe. I think it does. I think it does, and I think it might cling to certain elements more so. Whether it embodies itself as a spectre, or whether it comes out as a sudden noise, whatever. Like I say, nothing's been proven to me thus far, but I do believe that energy perhaps linger for considerable, a lot more of a considerable amount of time than we perhaps normally give credence to.
Yeah, I would very much agree with that. And I think that's a great point because, I mean, like you say, pulling into the science, you think about a thunderstorm or electrical storm, right? Like that energy, even when like there's not lightning strikes, that energy is still in the air and it does linger for quite some time before, during, and after a storm. So again, it's just energy and a different type of energy. And also too, to consider like, for example, like how we see things, right? Like on the scale of what we can see like that much on a scale that's this big. So what's in these other areas, and also associating that with what we can hear, right? There's only so much we can hear. So what's going on in those other spaces? And I think that's a lot that's limiting for us, right? Because there definitely is more going on, and we know there's possibilities of,
you see, I mean, I don't buy in. I'm going to contradict myself here if I'm not careful. I don't buy into aliens as science fiction would have us want to have us believe for sensationalized purposes, little green fellas and little, bullet-shaped ships and all that stuff. I don't buy into UFOs and all that stuff. That being said, I think anyone who thinks that we are solely the only beings that exist within, I don't like I say believe in aliens and stuff like that, but I do believe there are life forms that we have got no concept and understanding of, whether it be interdimensional, interplanetary, whatever, galaxy type, whatever. For us to think that this is us and there's nothing else, I think is madness, because we've never explored that far.
Yeah, I would agree.
So no, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in aliens. I do believe there's life. So why shouldn't I? And I've questioned myself on this. If I can believe that somewhere way out there that we haven't even discovered yet, that we may never discover, there's life out there. I can conceptualize that. I don't know in what form, but I can theorize that there is life, but I don't know what the hell it looks like. So why wouldn't I believe that there is unlife or life between life, if you like? And that's the really strange thing for me, because I can't prove to myself that there is other life out there, but I kind of think there is. So why would this is why I question myself sometimes. Why can't I convince myself that ghosts exist? Sometimes I think it's a case that you can become so hypercritical about something, and there's something that runs parallel that you'll give more credence to, that might make more sense than the thing that do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I can't prove there are aliens, no, but I still think there's life out there. Can't prove there are ghosts, but I'm resigned to the fact that I don't think there's life between life. I don't think. I don't know. I'm tying myself in knots a bit here, but you can see the comparisons, though, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I think for me, that's why I try to look at things in the. My belief is just that, you know, we all have souls, and that's energy, and that, you know, energy can't really be. It just exists. It just changes form. So to me, that is what got me thinking, okay, well, it kind of makes sense. And then I started applying that thoughts to, like, well, for example, like this, like, you're seeing me, but it's a weird reflection, like a digitally capture of me that's taken to where you are, like, you know, like 8 hours away, or like when we do holograms, or, you know, watch DVDs later or whatever, right? It's still a form of energy that we've captured, and it's almost, in this sense, could be like an active haunting you could relate it to, or on video, like a residual haunting, right? It's just, it's energy, right? So for me, that's what really got me thinking, like, okay, well, if you can kind of apply that convoluted way of thinking, then why could not other energy sources, like supposed spirits and ghosts and so on, project in ways that we may not understand, right? Because I think that's the main key. It's just like, we know so little, right? And I think that eventually, and especially now that this is becoming such a talked about genre, we'll see definitions change, vocabulary change, you know, new science applications. Like, you know, it's a long road before we really are going to be able to prove anything without a doubt. But I think we're on that way, and I think we have seen change, and we're going to see more change as the days come by.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to get to. I think I'm going to get to an age where, and not just through pure resignation, I think I possibly will get to a point in my life where I'll be even more so, perhaps, or I'm not going to say more so, less skeptical, still to be proven, but less skeptical than I am now. Do you know what I mean? Just this conversation, I'm not saying I've changed my thoughts of a lifetime, but I am slowly, maybe it's for my own, you know, peace of mind or whatever, you know, like I said, I don't believe in God. But that being said, who wouldn't want to think that there's at least something after? You know, I'm not going to pray for it to happen. I'm not going to subscribe to any particular deity or entity to say, please make it happen. But in my own, you know, somewhere in there, I think it would be a reassuring thought to think that there is something else. You know, I think I will get to a point where, just for my own comfort, I'd like to think there's something else. But it'd be nice if it was proven in the meantime. Would it happen in my lifetime? Probably not. Well,
We're trying.
they were trying. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
still
no,
we'll be doing these calls when my beard's a lot longer and grayer, and I'm like, you know, I'm nearly 70 and stuff, and it's like, we've nearly got one, and then, you know, the last thing I'll hear is quite literally that thing out of Ghostbusters. You're going to slam your fist on the table and say we got one.
I will keep my promise to you that either I will come over there, or if you come out here to visit, we will take you on an investigation and see what you think firsthand.
Well, with everything going on, everything's on backlog, but I will come over this year. But if and when you come over here, I will take. I've thought somewhere. I've thought somewhere. I don't live near it anymore. It's about about 150, 160, 170 miles away from here, I think. It's a place called Pluckley, and I was telling my friend about it earlier. It's the size of a postage stamp. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny little village. It's a hamlet. It's a true, the expression hamlet, I think, was designed for a place like this. You've never, just look up Pluckley, Pluckley in Kent, which is south of London, east and south of London. And I used to live on the North Kent coast, and I only ever went a couple of times. Pluckley pertains, I use the word carefully, to be the most haunted place in the UK. And it's tiny, but I think it's got something like 12 resident ghosts across
Wow.
graveyard, a church, a hotel, pub. There's literally nothing there, but they get so many people go every year, and it's fascinating. I mean, like I say, even for last time I went was 10 years ago, when my views were even more, a lot more harsh than they are now. But even I thought it was absolutely fascinating. There's kind of nothing there and everything there on this little teeny tiny village, and it's a very cool place to go. There's loads of there were quite a few videos on it on YouTube. So London itself is incredible for well, it's one of the most historic cities in the world, isn't it? Really, it's got so much, so much backstory to it. In any particular age. It's not like one particular age was,
Yeah.
full of history. The whole thing is just history itself, really. I don't say that as a conceited Englishman, because I'm not, I'm not English. I'm Scottish by blood, but I can understand why people love coming to Britain, whether it be Scotland, Wales, Ireland, England, wherever, because it's just steeped in history, and that's one thing, I guess we've got.
I loved it. Like, that still is my favorite trip of when I went to Chester and North Wales. Like, I absolutely fell in love with those areas. So I'd be really excited to check out London. I've always wanted to kind of follow the trail of the Jack the Ripper tales, just because there's that, kind of tale about how he may have ended up over here when.
Yeah, there's lots of theories about Jack.
So this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. And I look forward to having another conversation with you when we bring the entire team on. And, feel free to ask us some more questions from the skeptic's point of view, which we love. So thank you so
Okay.
very much.